morning and welcome to Love Every Moment, coming to you today from Seattle, Washington. Today's verse is 1 Peter 4:4. In all this, they are surprised that you do not run with them into the same excesses of dissipation, and they malign you. Now, this comes after last week's verse, and I had the link up here, where Peter warns us that we should not be continuing in the pursuit of fleshly lusts, fleshly desires, or the way of the Gentiles, as he puts it. And he lists several, such as sexual lusts and carousing with drinking and idolatries and so forth, because those will leave some marks in our soul, and it's going to be best if we just cut those carousing things off right away. And today's verse says people should notice that change in our lives. There really should be a change, and it should happen fairly immediately, not 50 years later. It should be an immediate change. If the Spirit is running the show, He's going to take us in a different direction. Not that we're perfect, but we're now heading in a different direction, and those we may have caroused with before should take notice of that. Now, sometimes Christians will say, well, we should cut off all communication with the world. Anybody who's not a Christian, we should have nothing at all to do with them. And I disagree with that, because in today's verse, they are still noticing, and they may have a reaction to that. Might be a positive reaction, might be a critical reaction, but they are still seeing that. Now, I have a story for you. When I was in my 20s, I was in an apartment, and the next door neighbors were two gay men, and they invited me over for dinner, and I accepted, and we had a nice dinner and a nice chat. And I told my church about that the next Sunday, and one of the elders really criticized me, and his exact words were, well, I would never break bread with sodomites. And I thought, well, then they're never going to hear the gospel from you either, right? Think about Jesus. Well, actually, let's have a look at it. In Mark 2:17, well, let me back up. In verse 15, Jesus goes to the house of one of his disciples, and they invite over all kinds of sinners and tax collectors. And the Pharisees notice that, and they ask, why is Jesus eating and drinking with tax collectors and sinners? In verse 17, hearing this, Jesus said to them, it is not those who are healthy who need a physician, but those who are sick. I did not come to call the righteous, but sinners. So Jesus engaged with sinners. He didn't engage in their carousing. He just had dinner with them. And my next door neighbors didn't invite me to an orgy. They invited me to dinner. So there are safe ways for us to still have communication with people of the world. And they need to have that exposure to God's love. Now back to our main part here, if I can get it. It says, they are surprised that you don't run with them into the same excesses of dissipation. And they may have a positive reaction. Well, good for you. You're cleaning up your life. Or they may malign you, as it says at the end of today's verse. And that reminds me of the blessing of the Beatitudes, where it says, blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. We're on the right path, and we're doing the right thing. And we still need to treat them with love. One more cross-reference. This reminds me of 1 Peter 3:15 that we cover back here, which says, but sanctify Christ as Lord in your hearts, always being ready to make a defense to everyone who asks you to give an account for the hope that is in you, yet with gentleness and reverence. So we need to be ready to tell them, this is how Jesus has changed my life, and why the Spirit is taking me in a new direction. Not having an argument, just saying this is the result. Now, last summer, I met a work camper named Sam. He was a Christian, and if a non-Christian invited him to have a beer, very friendly invite, his response was, well, I'm a Christian and I don't drink. And it came across as very holier than thou. In this 1 Peter 3:15, it says, with gentleness and reverence. And we need to treat those non-Christians we have contact with, we need to treat them with love. And that's what they should see coming out of us, is God's love changing our lives. So let's choose to love every moment, because then we're going to love every moment. I'm your average Dretch, and I hope you have a great week.